to another episode of Word Up with Danny Katz. Today, I am joined by podcast hostess extraordinaire, co-host of The Gold Pill, of Prima Donnas of the Gutter. And I know there are others that I'm missing, so you're going to catch me up to speed. Everyone, I'm here with Amy Dee. I'm so excited. Amy, how are you?
Oh my gosh, Danny, I'm so thrilled to be here on your pod, your Danny pod with you. I'm so honored to be here. You're one of my favorite people from when I was just listening to podcasts, and now here I am. So it's very exciting.
It's amazing that we've come to this place because you hopped on my radar. I guess it was through your Instagram, and I know you have multiple Instagram accounts. Yeah. And then I was super into your podcast, and then I started a podcast, and now you're helping me produce my podcast behind the scenes. So, and now we're in this same cool podcast community. So yeah. It's super awesome.
Yeah, I reached out to you in my winter of discontent when everything was going so crazy and it was so obvious where everything was headed, and it was that time when the elections were running really high, and I was just feeling really frustrated, and I didn't know how to unleash that frustration in a positive way. And you had reached out on your Instagram asking for people to help, and I was like, I will help. And I definitely just wanted to borrow your ear and hear what you had to say. And you encouraged me to start an Instagram at some capacity, and it took me a few months to get there, but then I did. And once I did, it was really, really a lot of great feedback. And so you're so important to the conception of the gold pill, truly. I mean, Meredith is as well, but there really wouldn't even be a person, Amy, looking to do this, without Danny's awesome support and suggestion. And so, yes, we've sort of just been woven into each other's lives over time, and it's phenomenal. It's really neat. And it's truly incredible to be listening to someone and respecting them so much, just at your own house. And then suddenly you're, getting advice, and now you're talking with them, and it's your mind expands infinitely when you start doing things like that.
I love that. I'm smiling so big right now. We have cameras off because Amy is very intelligently protective of her online, image, identity. I could take a lesson.
Yeah, no, I just figure if people can figure it out, good on them. Otherwise, I'm not gonna put it out there,
It's super, super smart. I really, on this end of it, because there's no going back for me, but on this end of it, I think there is so much power in having an anonymous presence, but a really big voice in the media sphere. So I really respect that that's how you do it. Was that a conscious choice?
Well, as I mentioned, I didn't know even how to put my voice out there at first, and it seemed easier to put my voice than my face. And then just kind of the nature of the game is, over time, it just kind of made sense that in the dynamic of Mare and I, that one of us would be behind the scenes and the other one would be more forefront. And since she had already had an online identity, kind of, with her astrology business, essentially, she was already out there, and she has a beautiful face and a beautiful personality, so it's a perfect match for us.
Well, I love the mystery of it, and of course I'm such a fan of you. So often in your podcast, I'm speaking to you, I'm yelling at the speakers, I'm yes, amen, go girl. So I'm curious to know your process of awakening to the sham show. Have you always been clued in to the fact that we live in a nefarious AI simulation, or is that?
Well, I was really hip to the fact that people were being exploited early on. In my 6th grade class, I gave a speech about the exploitation of women, and I'm not even a feminist to this day, but it was very clear to me just early on that people were being used. And then I was really I was raised by some very liberal parents, and I was obviously, they were teachers and speech therapists, and my mom has a long history of she grew up in Germany for the first 5 years of her life, and so there's a lot of just kind of control that runs really deep in my bloodline, I'd say. And I resisted that as much as I could, but I was still really bought into the liberal mindset for a very long time, just to kind of get along. And it was probably I don't know, about like 28, 29 years old, that I started realizing just like how much my personality from like getting out of high school into being like 28 was really generated by like the media. And I had always considered myself like a pretty media savvy person, but I was really just starting to understand like the depths to which the media played into our psyche and into our collective understanding of like the world. I had gotten my bachelor's in psychology, so I'd always had kind of an interest in human activity and human behavior, things like that. But yeah, things, I don't know exactly what happened. I think I got like hooked on drugs and things went wrong. And then I was like, how did I get here? Because things were going so good. I was kind of like a gifted little kid that was out, you know, succeeding and like putting on plays. And I just like my light had like fully dimmed. And I, you know, I did the really cool psychosis move where you go on YouTube until like 4 a.m. and like you're just like taking in all the information like a crazy person. And that was at a time when YouTube was still like kind of the Wild West for what it was. And so I feel like I got a pretty well-rounded education, and I was really lucky to find people along the way to listen to, like yourself and like Emily and Randy, and I mean all of them that were really, really insistent upon not believing them at face value, but looking into it for yourself. And so anyone I found online that I kind of clung to sort of make sense of the world, I was really, that was one of the main things I would listen for, is for them to want you to go discover it, the things that they were talking about in your own way. And so that's how I ended up here, is basically I never got off that road. The world has become an unfolding mystery every day. It gets more interesting and more creepy and more beautiful and more chaotic. And yet I love it I love it more every day. I'm not to say I'm like in a great mood or, you know, totally stoked to be here and experience it every single second, but I think overall it's like a beautiful picture. And I guess that's how I got here, is I sort of went crazy and then I realized it's all for something, you know.
I love, there's so many pieces that I want to unpack. I had no idea. And that's kind of similar to Emily's story as well. So that's really interesting. I mean, I think there's something to allowing ourselves to go off the deep end that allows us to avail ourselves to having our worldviews crushed, because it's like we've already annihilated ourselves on some level where it's like, okay, well, it can't be worse than what I've already gone through.
Absolutely. And I kind of was like thinking about it, it's like that like kind of guru moment where they tell you that rich person to get rid of everything they own. It's kind of that same thing where it's like you sort of shed everything that was important to you. I sort of jokingly told my friend the other day, I was like, I did an Irish goodbye on my life. Like I just kind of like said peace out to all of my old activities and my old neighborhoods and stuff like that, and just kind of like started rebuilding like a new, I'm still in the same town, but I mean, rebuilding like a new cosmology and a new, yeah, everything had to fall apart for it to go back together in a certain order, you know?
And were there any particular stories or narratives that like snapped you out of it?
The ones that I was really attracted to, because I'm just really into pop culture, were like the Beyonce is possessed by, you know, the devil or things like that. And that was sort of alarming because at the time that was first coming out, unless you had grown up like a Christian, the internet 2008 was probably the first time you were ever really hearing that sort of narrative. And so the Hollywood piece was how I got in, because I really did understand the way that they capitalize on human beings, the way that I grew up doing a lot of like theater and stuff too. One of the local theaters around here, it was really, really great. And it had kids and adults. And I mean, it wasn't crazy, but it was definitely, I understand like how, you know, that dynamic works and how kids kind of just are considered little mini adults. And the world is just kind of different in the arts if you're a kid. And I don't think that at least in my community, I don't think that parents like understood really like what they were dropping their kids. I think they just thought they were dropping their kids off to like a singing class or like a class where kids were just going to be whatever, like putting on a play. And the social dynamics of like a theater teen, I don't know, in the 90s was sort of like, you're away from your parents all the time, you're able to kind of do whatever. I'm sure you can use your imagination. So there was, yeah, go ahead.
No, please continue.
Well, I don't even know where I was going with that. All this to say that there was always this real element of I understood like the sham, the show, the illusion, the way that like there's a frontal facing person and a back facing person. I understood that, and then that's why the Beyonce piece, the Hollywood piece, the Alex Jones sacrifice, you know, that whole thing where he had caught the Bohemian Grove stuff, that really got my attention because I understood a lot of it already. I just didn't understand how it worked together. And then finally seeing it all kind of put together in a way that after my mind had sort of been broken of the way I thought things were supposed to go and how it kind of reassembled into the way that things obviously go, it made the world make a lot more sense. I kind of explain it like you get a lot more unhappy because the world becomes like a less dreamy place, but you become a lot less crazy. Because
Right.
you understand, yeah, what's going on. So it's kind of like if you can manage your frustration with the way things are, then that's a little easier, I think, than not knowing what's going on.
That makes sense. That's really interesting that you were in it, but you weren't of it. Like you were dropped into this realm of theater, of performance, but it sounds like you kind of were suspicious of it from the get-go from your experience.
My mom was raised, she is from Germany, and so her mom married like a soldier to get over here, so she was like a foreign army brat, and basically she's a legal alien, but she is like here, not a citizen. And she had a different sort of upbringing, and that made me have kind of a different sort of outsider upbringing. I've given this a lot of thought, and because of that, I think I have this real like outsiders. And when I enter a room, it's not like I go, oh, this room's inviting of me. It's like, oh, this room is at best neutral of me. And like, so what information is going on and how, you know, I was raised by kind of like a tough mom. And so I had to like figure out the room and figure out how to negotiate with relationships and, you know, get around the world in kind of like a different way, because I wasn't really taught how to, you know, do that stuff by my mom, because she wasn't really taught how to do that. So we both have this sort of, for lack of a better word, like alien way of interacting socially with the world, you know, and it's worked out to my favor now. But for, you know, in high school and stuff, it was sort of like, you get along with people, but they're not like getting you and you're not getting them. Does that make sense?
It
The
totally makes
misconnection.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like you had, and maybe it's because your mom being from Germany, but like you had an awareness of this outsider status from early on. And I'm wondering if the strategies that you were employing to survive, you know, just life and adolescence in the world as an alien, do you think those are the skills that contribute to how well you critique culture? I'm very struck by your unique take on culture. And it just feels like you get it on so many levels that not just a lot of people don't, but a lot of alt media people don't. So do you think that was because of this awareness of being alien from early on?
You know, maybe I've always, okay, so I'm an only child too. And so I kind of like, I was raised on the TV. And so my mom would be cleaning and my dad would be at work and or my dad would be home working and I would have the remote, and like in between points or in between like commercials, you would change the channel. And so I was always like sort of responding to the TV, like as in real time, not like I knew they couldn't hear me. I wasn't like looking for a response, but I always had like really quick reactions to things like that. And so, and then when my friends would come over in college and we would try to watch TV, like I don't watch TV like a normal person. I'm like stopping it constantly. Like Sean, my boyfriend, he's the same way. Like we're stopping it. Let's talk about it. What we see, like we don't watch it in like a linear fashion, or we'll go back and watch something like, you know, 10 times. Not even because it's particularly interesting, just because it's something to us, like it catches us. And so I think, yeah, I've always kind of done that and not even realized it was something I did that was weird until I got out into the wild. Yeah, when I started watching TV with my friends, like once I had moved out, it was very clear that we watched TV in a different way, because they would always want to watch like artsy cool things because my friends were really cool. And I would want to watch like dumb stuff, like I want to watch Making the Video, you know, or something like that. And they would always be like, why? And I'm like, well, you're getting so much more out of it. It's not just you're seeing what they're telling you, like you're getting the full spectrum. You can really like, reach into like, what's Britney Spears' psyche right here, and like why would she be so, and in like 2001 I'm doing this. And so I always joke with Nish, for my co-host for Prima Donnas of the Gutter, that like all of this knowledge is totally for naught unless I do this podcast. So it's a really good thing that I'm doing it, because I don't even know what I would be. It would just be like a storage of like void knowledge otherwise. So it's good that I get to share it and that people find it interesting.
Yeah. I mean, so many of us, we have, our paths take as long as they take. And it's not, like our normal indoctrinated, like you go to school and you go to college and then you graduate and then you're in your career. Like, I think for anyone living an authentic, not anyone, but for a lot of us, it's just a more circuitous, nonlinear path that doesn't even make sense until we're reflecting on how we got to where we are, at some moment where it's starting to feel a little bit good.
Yeah. And the more that I lean into that kind of thinking, I really just do arrive at this weird, like divine timing sort of place. Not all the time, but like, when you meet certain people, it's like the right time sometimes. And then those people, it kind of like snowballs into something else. And then there's all this energy and momentum. And I just feel like, it wasn't my time before. Like I was too sensitive and like emotional for business. And I really just like couldn't handle helping people in the traditional therapeutic sense. And so I had to like wander for some time and just like realize how I wanted to express myself in a way that would also be in alignment with like helping other people maybe make sense of it, or at least helping people feel like less crazy for seeing the things they're seeing. So I think so many people are seeing things with a new perspective right now. So I just really wanted to support that.
Yeah. Thank you. On behalf of humanity, thank you.
Oh yeah, dude, for sure.
So how did the gold pill come to be?
Well, the gold pill came to be, Meredith was talking about it online. Just she and I were kind of like buddies at the time, just kind of meme friends on Instagram. And it really struck me as this like really, really cool image, because the red pill is sort of like, aggressive, but really it's a really good first pill. And the blue pill, of course, I don't think anyone listening wants to take, unless they want to like have a fun night. And so the gold pill to me over time has come to mean like alchemy. Like there is the black pill, which is really nihilistic, and that's kind of where you end up eventually, for a moment, I'd say. And then there's kind of, if you're, I would say, lucky, or if you are interested in kind of like a different perspective and not just being angry and like dejected all the time, like, I was when I reached out to you. It kind of burns off, and then that was kind of neat to me, as it becomes like the gold pill, which is just kind of like someone who understands what's going on. The world makes sense. We try to tell others, we try to make our lives a little bit more comfortable, since we have kind of an awareness that makes life uncomfortable. And I just feel like there's enough of us now that I kind of also likened it to being like a fire that people who are in the community could just kind of go and like laugh at, or like they can go and meet people or whatever. It's kind of like a digital community or digital space where people can just feel less alone, and knowing that we're all over the country and the world seeing what we're seeing. And there are so many people in our direct, families and neighbors and roommates and all that just don't see it, and they refuse to see it, and their own psychology prevents them from seeing it. And that's okay, but that doesn't make you crazy. And so we can all, chit chat and form a little, not an alliance, but like just a web of understanding and support. And it's been really cool to see how it's grown and to see what it's done for people. I get, emails all the time that people are able to like feel more comfortable, with their own thoughts, simply because they know there's other people around that think these things. And I can't even tell you how great that makes me feel.
Yeah, I totally get it. And I think, I feel like where we're at right now as a global culture, with this giant big tech monopoly and the gross censorship, that it is on us to, in this very grassroots way, to put the truth out through our own unique personality, because you never know like what alchemy is going to draw people in, and who's like, so many times we'll hear something 100 times, but it doesn't click in until we hear it the just right way, in the just right frequency. So I feel like it is kind of on all of us who know what's going on to share it and spread it, to see who, you know, who we can connect with and who it's going to reach and land with.
Yeah, the community piece to it is really cool. It's also been really neat because I think I've said this before on another show, but there were so many foundational shows for me personally. I know that Randy and Emily's show Off Planet Radio was like huge for me in making sense of a lot of the like stranger things that are going on. Robert Phoenix was so big. All these shows were so foundational, and they were so, but the way the style of like alt media used to be is really just like, it's really super informative, and it's like for people who can take in dense information. And I think that it's really neat to be able to, at this time, I think that we have like upped a level, like from all that work that was done by everybody in the last 10 years, that we're able to talk about these things like in a more conversational way. And it doesn't have to be about, it can be about the documents, but it doesn't have to be about the documents. A lot of more people understand the gist of what's going on and the energetics and the change, and like people are just kind of more hip to the energy because everything's so in flux. Like, how could you not be? And I think that that allows us to not be so it allows kind of more for more latitude in how you talk about these things, and it kind of in a way makes it more conversational. And I think that makes it easier to talk about, and then it kind of like it echoes and like goes throughout the zeitgeist and in a less like fearful way, because it is really, really intense. You know, if you're a fearful person, and it's dangerous information, you know, so to hear what's coming or what people would like to have happen, you know, that's intense. And so that's where the gold pill comes in, is it's like the intensity is there, but it's the attitude with which we handle the intensity is like the gold pill thing, you know, like it's not about not being scared of her. It's about like choosing to like find a different way to feel about something, because it's not productive at all to be scared. So if something's dangerous, then like what needs to be done? Or if nothing can be done, then what are we worrying about and trying to mitigate the worry into like a nothing, you know?
Yeah, I definitely feel like you guys are helping to break down barriers, because you're right. Like in the, you know, I will just say truth in the truth
Yes.
community for a while, it's just been like really intense singular talking heads yelling at the camera. And
Mhm.
you know, full transparency, there are moments where I would, you know, I've certainly been that angry talking head. And it's
Sure.
when we're shattering people's worldviews and inviting them to consider really terrifying information, I think it's sometimes asking too much when we ourselves are so like freaky deaky. And I think there's something to just being like two girls hanging out and giggling and like being sweet to one another, and you know, bringing in more personal things in, you know, weaving it in where we can just relax a little bit, you know, like also my nervous system calmed down when I'm listening to you guys, and I'm like, oh, I'm cozying up with Amy and Maren. It's like I'm hanging out with my girlfriends instead of, you know, watching an episode of InfoWars, which is just like really intense on the cortisol.
Yeah, and I like, don't get me wrong, like I cut my teeth on all that stuff. Like I love me some InfoWars occasionally. I love me some really, really like out there, like military, like CIA. I love that. And that's what basically is, yeah, being woven into the gold pill. It's like that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's like two women talking. It's also just sort of like, Mare and I both understand, as you do too, Danny, and probably most of your listeners understand, that so much of the future is not like certain, and what they want, the ominous what the powers that were, what the losers that are control freaks, you know, what those people, what they want is what they want, and they want nothing more truly than for us to envision our own doom, because then we'll create it. And I just like, once I realized that was the name of the game, I mean, even recently, the gold pill's been kind of undergoing like sort of some rebranding stuff, because I don't want to perpetrate the narratives that are obviously just there to be like loosh harvests. And at this point, like the narrative surrounding the experimental stuff, like I won't talk about it on the thing or on the channel anymore, simply because it's like we're at a point where it's like, if you know, you know, and like, we're at a new thing. And I feel like we need to move the conversation forward kind of like constantly. Like 2 years ago, you did your brilliant, or you contributed to that brilliant piece. I don't know if we can say it, the P movie.
Probably not, but
Then let's just refer to it like that. And that was a brilliant piece. And I don't even know where I was going back, so I got all like sidetracked on not being able to say
it. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. But I'm so sidetracked. We'll have to edit this part out. Oh my gosh, what was I just saying? I'm even being good.
Well, no, I think we were talking about there's the scary information. You were talking about how you don't talk about the lollipops.
You talked, yes, you did that wonderful piece 2 years ago, and that was 2 years ago, and you followed it up with another piece, and it's like, that was it. That, you know, and then we got to see that play out, and that was what I covered on the gold pill. And then beyond that, it's like, it's playing out. I'm not going to keep on like putting those stories up there. And it's interesting to see, like, I'm starting to get wiser to what social media is like pushing at us to pump out as like people who are, you know, aggregating information. It's interesting to watch the evolution of social media, TikTok, and also be like kind of an active part of it. The branding piece is really interesting because there are things on gold pill that I don't necessarily like. I'm not like, oh yeah, I'm a hardcore believer of this, but I really do like to just get people thinking, because that's where all my best like work has come from, is just like thinking about things and kind of like thinking my way out of them, or thinking into a way that they could possibly make sense. Yeah, it's tough. Gold pill has it's been tough lately because of the algorithm changes, and because I'm really trying to be more careful with not putting out, not alarmist stuff. I don't think I ever did that, but not putting out stuff that the narrative, the AI narrative is like pushing, and it's getting more and more obvious by the day that there's like a real, you know, agenda they're pushing.
Totally. So have you been affected by the algorithm changes and banning and censorship, and have you guys experienced that?
Yeah, recently I posted a video that like what was his name? I'll have to go back, and I don't even want to say his name because it's probably going to get you flagged. So there was this guy that basically laid it out what's going on in no uncertain terms, and I think that he had been sort of like red flagged on Instagram, and after I got like 100,000 likes in like 2 days after posting it, because that's how much it resonated with people, that like there is something going on, and that this is a very pivotal time, and this is how they're doing it, and if you want out, like, here's how you do that. That was the gist of the video. And then I immediately got shadow banned within like 48 hours, and I'm currently working on figuring that puzzle out.
Yeah, it's so weird to go from having a huge reach and a huge impact to just not.
Well, it's so funny because it really, like, as I was building gold pill with Mare, my man and I were also like, well, this is going to happen eventually, because you don't just get to like tell people stuff and have them, you know, eat it up because it's resonating, and because it's fascinating, and because no one else is like talking about it. And you don't just get to like do that forever without some kind of like interference. So we started a new website called starlight.watch, where we host our podcasts, and we host the Occult Rejects, and anyone else in our little group who wants to join. I think Shane's going to be on there pretty soon.
Nice.
Yeah, basically just a place that like Sean and I will never, you know, take your stuff down. There's probably like limits to I'm not like, I am a free speech absolutist, but I totally understand not wanting to like amplify like the craziest of the crazy ideas that I will keep in the back of my head. So like I do have a very, 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 very wide bar, you know, but
yeah,
I'd say there are margins. Are
there any margins? Are there any margins that are coming to mind right now?
Yeah, the ones that come to mind are like the really, 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 really like hardcore like videos, like the produced anti like Holocaust videos. It's not that I don't think those things are okay to think or say, it's just that I don't want to like post like a very well like funded, you know, video on something like that. Not because I don't even think what they're saying is true, it's simply because it's like, if you want to arrive at that idea, and honestly, Danny, here's my thing, what if someone wants to ask, what if there were more people? You know what I mean? Those kinds of questions. What if it was even worse than they said? And that's not, what if I'm asking questions like that? And it's like, those aren't even allowed. So I always try to like think of ways you could question the narrative in a way that's like not insulting the narrative.
Right.
And if you can't even like do that, then that's sort of weird. But yeah, I just figure that's not, for the amount of trouble you would get in for that, for the amount of people that would want to hear that, and the amount of quality information and truth or free, the value of that free speech is, for the amount of trouble we could get in, is really it's not in balance. And that is actually one of the hardest parts about running a channel, is like trying to figure out, especially with the constraints of like Instagram or YouTube or whatever, like how do I get the most information out without putting too much out that I'm going to get banned? And like, how do I walk that line consistently? And I was doing it for a while, and I think I don't know if I got cocky or whatever, but it was a really good video, and people really, I mean, they felt it, Danny, they felt it, they loved it. So it obviously, like, that's the thing about our group, is I mean, as much as it sucks, it's sort of like a badge of honor, because it's like, if it hasn't happened to you, people start, questioning.
Totally. Emily and I were talking about this today. We've been talking behind the scenes about this RKX deal. Have you been tuning into his channel, Jason?
No, tell me.
Everyone's talking about it at this, like, people had been sending both Emily and I, this guy, his channel is RKX, ARCAIX.
Okay.
And people have been sending us his videos for months, and we've both been resistant for our own reasons that we hadn't traded notes on. But it's kind of amped up in the past couple of weeks, where like everyone is talking about it. And it's just another version of like Tartaria, everything is an AI simulation. You know what? Cancel Clear Delete. I don't mean to say it's just this, because I've only seen like maybe 4 or 5 videos, and he has a ton. So it's
a cosmology though, like that someone is placing out there for other people to investigate and to look into and all that kind of stuff.
Correct. And the two things that were coming up were like, why is he not banned? Like, when I think of how many strikes I've gotten, how much shadow banning I've gotten, and I'm like, why is he allowed to say this stuff and no one's hassling him? Which is kind of my same thing about so many people on social media or YouTube that I'm starting to question more and more and more. And then the other piece is, and you said this early in this conversation today, that part of what turned you on was listening to Randy and Emily and Robert and people who are saying like, do this, research it yourself. And this thing with this Jason RKX guy, from what I've seen, which granted is not by any means the full breadth of what he's offering, but is like, why am I supposed to just believe another talking head who's telling me stuff? Like, there's a lot of it that certainly resonates, but it's like, unless I see hard stats, I'm just not that into believing people telling me what to think.
See, that's so funny, because even as you said that, it's easier to see why that's not like as cool, because he is telling you to believe him and like not at all opening it up to like, well, since it's belief, you guys should go and, sink your teeth into this belief in whatever way you can. It's like, believe me, believe what I'm saying, which is, that's silly. I think you can only like really believe in yourself and like what your understanding of something is. But I definitely, I mean, it's obvious, I think, to anyone that certain people are allowed to operate, and that there's like a rhythm to when people get taken down. I know like Robert got taken down around the time of the election. I know 2 guys that I listen to that are like really, really spicy. They got taken down, and then like within a week or 2, month or 2 of the election being like, quote unquote settled, they were allowed back on, you know what I mean? And so now they're doing fine. And it's so and then I had my friend New York Patriot today reach out and say like, here's a technique for, and I'll share with you too, for getting out of shadow ban. I don't know if it works, but it's like, there's people that are like trying behind the scenes, like that's the thing about working against someone, is you definitely get stronger, as you do that. So, and then I really do feel like, even a few months ago when we were all just kind of chit-chatting, you and Emily and me and Mara, about like just like kind of the future and like what we were, hoping or whatever, like so much stuff from that meeting has manifested. And I just feel like our numbers are getting like stronger, and I keep saying like everyone's getting more talented and like their reach is getting like better. I mean, you know, Niche is really, her material has been like, it's always great, but it's been really incredible, like in the last few months, especially. And the same with like Emily and Robert, and basically everyone's minds are just coming together, and like we all see it in this way. And it's really neat because as far as I can tell, none of this sort of like etheric alliance or whatever, that's not even an alliance, that's how like pure of an alliance it is. You know, like there it's pure and it's good, and it's creating more and more like energy and waves around it. And I'm telling you, like it's so cool to be able to be a part of it and also to witness it, because it's, the art has never been better, the commentary has never been better, like the street food has never been better. Like as crappy as things like seem on the surface and all that, like the underbelly of everything is so full of creativity and chaos. And if you are the kind of person that can like really figure out how to wield chaos, and not in a controlling way, but just wield it in a way that is not gonna like, you know, make you crash, this is a really cool time to be alive.
I appreciate that perspective.
Go ahead, let me know.
No, I mean, I've definitely had a like, this planet is so dumb week.
Oh girl, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this has been a brutal week. I mean, for me, I just left Instagram because I couldn't take it anymore. Like for me, it didn't work to have 8,500 followers and 20 views.
Yeah,
you know, like
yeah,
that wasn't working. So for me, like, no, my numbers are not getting stronger. Like it's more of an energy suck. But you're right. Like the ideas are becoming more cogent, more coherent. And for me at this point, the community is my lifeline. So now that I've, you know, like I hired a new business coach to figure out, okay, social media doesn't exist for me anymore. And I've been dependent upon it for 10 years. So I need to restructure everything. And anytime she mentions letting go of, you know, this type of thing or what I do with Emily, and I'm like, no, that's my heart. Like that is like giving me other humans, and it's expanding my life, and we're weaving, you know, continuing to weave more and more and more. So beyond just like numbers and followers and money coming in, like it's far more important to me what we are very organically creating together. So that's keeping me in it.
You know, outside of like having to like have money to exist, like I always think about Nick Mullen, this comedian, has this bit that's been out for a couple months now about how like, what is a Picasso and what is a Van Gogh? Like, give me an Alex Jones, you know what I mean? And I just think about the work that I have listened to and I've seen people put out, and I wonder, like in 50 years, if, you know, people are still around, like, are we, you know, are these the people that people are going to be listening to? Because everything is so up in the air right now. It's like, what will the new world order be? And I don't mean like the new world order in like the perverted sense, but like the self-organizing like dynamic, you know, like what will that be and how will that come together and what's going to overlay? And it's so fascinating because it's all unknown, and all of the old heroes right now, for various reasons, wink, wink, are, you know, going to the sidelines, and they're no longer going to be a part of the stage. And soon, like the sands of time, they will be, you know, dust, and there will be these new mythologies emerging. And I'm not saying I want to be one of them, but I am saying I definitely can imagine some of the things that I've listened to in the last 5 years as being part of them, you know, like some of the great ideas and some of the expansive takes on history, and some of the mind opening sort of perspectives that we all have been introduced to. And if you can have like the kind of mind that can hold all that stuff, there's going to be some really, really cool stuff that emerges, and out of the muck, whatever this is. And I wonder if it's, you know, I don't wonder, it could very well be people that we knew are like, you know, I mean, included in the next like great book that gets edited, you know, by the demiurge. But they were there. Yeah.
Oh, totally. I mean, we'll see, because it's changing so hardcore in terms of like establishment, and then people who are allegedly alt media but are still establishment. So I feel like, yeah, it's all yet to be written as far as how this is all going to shake out. I think that, one thing that's binding us is that from my perspective, we don't seem compromised or compromisable, right? There's like a base integrity.
Yes.
It doesn't seem like anyone here is like selling out for truth or likes or followers. So I'm, and I've always been of the mindset that like cream rises to the top. And as long as I stay in integrity and I stay true to myself, that's all I can do. So given that we're all doing that, it's kind of like a brain trust, right? Because like we're so on the forefront of examining this and unpacking it and unraveling it, that, I listen to you, I listen to Robert, I listen to Nish, and like new ideas pop online, new connections are made, and then that opens the way for new. So that part is really exciting. It's like we're all kind of on the forefront together.
Yeah, it's really cool. And the thing that's neat is we all kind of do have a self-referential sort of world, in that there are things that sync up because we listen to each other, but we all have our own ways that we perceive the world. And I think it's really interesting to see how they all come together and create new ideas. And again, like just people listening at home, like they will write in and tell us their ideas. That's one of the biggest things with the prima donnas of the gutter, is we're just trying to like discern the collective dream. And so we are not really concerned on that show so much with like, is this true? Is it not true? We're more concerned with like, what is the narrative of the dream? And so it's really it's a different way of kind of analyzing culture than say people who are trying to like just decode it or, just even just enjoy it and talk about why they liked it. It's just a different, we see it through the lens of everything that happens, truth, lies, everything. Performance, it all counts in it's all going into the soup. So then what is the soup going to taste like? And then what is that trying to tell us? It's a totally different way than I've ever could have conceived of doing a show. And Nish is 100% the mysterious mastermind behind that with me.
Okay, we have to talk about prima donnas of the gutter. It is like candy for me. I love it so much. And I think, a couple things, because I think one thing that you and Mara are doing with Gold Pill, it's like very feminine, and that's what you and Nish are doing as well. And I think that this particular truther mediascape has been so dominated, not just by men at all, but by the masculine way of doing it. And I think that there's something like really revolutionary about the way that the women, in our little tribe are doing it and allowing it to be more feminine and conversational and taking these, little tangents about our lives. And then, so you and Nish started Prima Donnas of the Gutter. You guys take on fashion and pop culture from this like insane, multi-dimensional, deep woo perspective. It's like, in my 20s-ish, I did read those shitty gossip rags and, fashion magazines. And I worked at Vogue for 2 years and I was into all of that. And I always had this like underlying bit of shame about how shallow and lame it all was. And it's like, I kind of get it back with you guys.
Yes. No, culture is so rich, and it's really, even on face value, it's kind of interesting because it's just like, if you just look at it even from the straight perspective of this is programming and this is like, they're trying to mirror to me how they want me to act. It's fascinating. I don't even know how that came together. It was Nish and I just kind of started talking about like Kim Kardashian and these like long, creepy like gloves that she was wearing about like a year ago. Okay. And I thought that Nish was just like talking about this kind of stuff with everyone because she was on a show with Emily once that like really caught my attention, just talking about, I think, a show. And I thought, oh, this is some really well-worn territory. I guess it's not. And I guess she really wanted to talk about it more. So then we started really just, going in deep on not the Kardashians per se, but like that kind of stuff, because we both had this really like eye to eye understanding that there's just more than meets the eye going on with these energies and these archetypes. And sometimes the archetype picks them and sometimes they pick the archetype. But either way, once that sort of exchange of energy is happening, they're on like a different sort of, not a different level, but a different sort of way of life. And that energy, this universal energy, is like working through them in a different way. And so their lives on this like main stage are very dramatic. And it's sort of interesting to see how the hologram of like the universe or of Earth or the human experience is sort of reflected in all of the celebrities and all of the fashion and culture. And, you know, we never know. And Nish would probably be more on the side of saying all this stuff is really planned and very like meticulously thought out. And I'm totally open to that. I'm more on the side of like, I don't know, but there's also, she would also be open to this too. I think a universal aspect of like beyond the people trying to control it. There's this universal energy that's being used by these like, you know, celebrity vessels. And that's just sort of the idea behind it. Is we look at the Hollywood narrative, the culture narrative on the US stage and sometimes the international stage as best we can, like a dream, and just try to see the energies at play and see what's going on. It's fun.
It's so fun. It's so juicy. Who came up with the title?
Well, okay, that's me. There's a Fall Out Boy song. But it's called This Ain't a Scene. It's an arm race. And actually it's really funny because that song's basically about like people who essentially it's about the band. They get famous and they realize it's not just a scene, it's like a competition. But it's also about like once you kind of reach a certain understanding in life, it's like you're like, this isn't a scene, this is more of like a war. And yeah, the lyric Prima Donnas of the Gutter is basically from that. And I just love it because it's that high-low connection. It's like, let's talk about like the really high spiritual or like the really, really like lofty esoteric, and let's connect it to like how it's, you know, playing out with the Kardashians or, you know, with Christina Aguilera or whoever. Doja Cat.
It's so juicy. I feel like you guys hit an artery with this show. Like I see this show being so freaking huge because, you know, for most of us, we're examining what, like politics, regular television shows, like the kind of usual programming, movies, but no one's touching on like fashion and gossip. You guys are the first one to do it. And that is like a multi-gajillion dollar distraction / psyop. That really is like that, those gutter ghetto vibes that is really worthy of unpacking. And you guys are doing it from such a high level. So the contrast of the material that you're deconstructing and your guys' lens of perception, but then just thinking, you know, like I remember your show on Kim Kardashian wearing Marilyn Monroe's dress and how deep you took it and how many eyes were on that and not realizing like how many people that's affecting. There are no words for how much I love what you guys are doing.
It's really, really, really fun. I can't tell you like how much gratitude, like to the universe, the gratitude I have for being able to talk about the two very like outlying things that I know like together. Nish is a maven. She's incredible at production, and she has, you know, what's so funny is when we started, we just kind of knew we like talking about it, but neither of us knew like how much we knew about whatever. And so just kind of in doing the shows over time, it's really neat to see like I have like this sort of encyclopedic knowledge of like recent Hollywood culture, and she has this vast, expansive, like eternal knowledge of fashion and art and movements, and her perception of what's going on today is always really interesting. And so when we'll just still be in like chit chats back and forth, and it's like something will come up like this is a scoop, and Hish just got into like a really gnarly car accident, and Nish's little peepers were on that immediately. And so we're looking into that and we're going super deep. And Doja Cat right now is in the process of like shaving her eyebrows off on TikTok. That's
I just saw that. I didn't realize that because I don't know who anyone is.
Yes, okay. Fair.
But I did see this video of this like beautiful bald woman shaving her eyebrows, and I'm like, why is this here? What are we doing?
Right. And why is that there? And then it's like in my crazy mind, I would be like, well, let's go back to the last like bald woman I saw on TV. And that was where we made a big deal out of it. And that was Jada Pinkett Smith. And that was the big alopecia slap movement on the Oscars. And I'm just wondering why we're seeing all these bald women lately. And Nish and I would probably go on to say there's like, you know, a phenomenon happening that would, you know, be causing things like that to occur. Yeah, it really, and then also there is the like the Britney Spears aspect of everything where she went a little bit, you know, like as a natural and like healthy response to the life she was living she went a little cuckoo and she shaved her head on a national stage and that caught a lot of attention. And so I wonder, you know, how are these things related? And I just
also Demi Moore, G.I. Jane.
Yes, there's absolutely that. And so there's all these yeah, you can pull together all these strings and sort of synthesize and like come up with something that makes it make sense. But the other thing with Doja Cat that it's I'm like I pray is like nothing is she's turning 27 really soon, and that's like the 27 club, and there's just been a lot of like turbulence in her career, like where she had a massive success and they dressed her like Marilyn. We talked about this in the Marilyn episode, and like I'm sure she'll be fine. I'm just that kind of person. But that was interesting to me to see that like it went from really, she was supposed to go on tour with The Weeknd, who's like a massive performer. It was going to be like a huge concert. And she had to drop out after Coachella, I think, for like vocal surgery or something like that. And so she was kind of dropping out then. And I was worried in like the way that, you know, just, oh, that's not very good. To see like her have this huge arc of success and then like she's not really working for the people who she needs to work for right now, so she's not making the money. And then just seeing the hair thing, it just seems like there's some kind of, you know, there's like I said, it could be an overarching narrative of just like a universal archetypal energy, or it could be like she's, you know, truly being driven to do these things by manipulation. I don't know.
See, as you're saying this, and I do want to acknowledge like, and I have not yet met Nish or spoken to her, but her body of timeless knowledge in terms of art and fashion and movements is really notable. Yes. And I love that you guys are doing this show, because to bring that perspective and that much knowledge from so many different realms into what's going on right now is just so helpful in terms of context. But it has me thinking, because like I said, for me, I don't know about this RKX guy. Like a lot of what he says that I've heard really does resonate. And he talks about these cycles, like that the AI is just repeating these same cycles. And Adam and John talk about this on No Agenda as well, how we're back in the 70s, right? With the gas shortages and the Russia issue, and like so many things are just a repetition. And I'd be curious because you know, from the kind of Jason archaic cyclical perspective, what's playing out in terms of these celebrities and with fashion and all those other pieces. I'm not sure that there's anything there, but just with that overlay, I'm curious. I'm always curious about the synthesizing of everything that we're all doing independently, you know, like what Emily and I are figuring out with the IDW and the Rogan adjacent people. And like, well, how does that synthesize, you know, with Prima Donnas of the Gutter and with what the Iconic podcast is doing? And just like, I want us all to get together in the same place and
summit.
Grade notes. Yes, totally.
So it looks like the gas crisis was in 79. And so when you said that we're in the 70s again, it makes me think we're in the 90s again, in the early millennium. And that totally tracks, because 79, 99, and right now would sort of be the same vibe. In that in fashion anyways, the 90s were so informed by the 70s, and then as we get back into like 2000, 2001, things like there's kind of a why, like some people really cling on to the analog, which I would say like that's like your hipster sort of like indie sleaze, and then you have like the other side, which goes into like, you know, pop, synthesizer, really vocal auto-tune, like, you know, like drum machines, like things like that, where it's more technologically based. And I would say that got reflected in the style, where you had like a real revival of like the 70s and a real like, you know, a vintage revival, and then you had people like wearing, I don't know, like bright silver like mylar pants and going to raves. Like this was all happening at the same time, I guess. And then if you think about it that way, disco was happening at that time too. So you had that same sort of like dichotomy of energies, where you had like very analog, very traditional, like rock and roll, this is the sound of our generation, and you had this like new departure of like, we're just going to go and get loose and get lost on the dance floor. God bless.
God bless. All right. So as we wrap up this half, before we go into our spicier second half, I am curious to know, now that you are, I'm going to put you in the expert category in terms of analyzing the deepu of celebrity. Are they actual humans? Like, what are they? Do they really exist?